Hello and welcome to another episode of Historic Hindsight. I'm John, that's Tom, and today we're going to talk to you about Thomas the Tank Engine.
That's right, Johnny. My favorite thing as a kid, Thomas the Tank Engine, and how he was able to link the east to the west, the east coast to the west coast with his Thomas the Tank Engine train Transcontinental Railroad line. Yeah,
I didn't know. I didn't realize he was behind that. He was. It's all Thomas's fault.
It's all Thomas's fault, or
so
joy.
The Transcontinental Railroad.
Yes,
this is the making of it. When did we do this? Was this the 18 or 1700s?
Yeah, 1800s. So the Transcontinental Railroad. This is a truly American story. It's in all of its forms, with government corruption, money laundering, land theft, exploitation of workforce, unfair labor practices, and casualties of both native and foreign peoples to a very large degree in both wars that got fought over this, and then of course subsequent workforce that was brought in,
wars for land and things like that.
All that fun stuff. It is a glorious idea that America needs to be connected coast to coast. It's the culmination of the manifest destiny, and it begins all the way back in the 1840s, Johnny. When it is completed, it is a 1,911 mile long line reaching from Sacramento, California to Omaha, Nebraska. So
holy cow.
Yeah, it's a good long line, but that's what we call the Transcontinental Railroad. Of course, it connects into other previously existing railroads that get it from coast to coast.
Yeah, but it's basically cutting out or getting across the Louisiana Purchase. Pretty much, right? Like, get all the gold rush folks out there on a train instead of hoofing it in wagons.
Through wagons, yep. So all the way back in 1832, just 5 years after the first railroad line was laid in the United States, a man by the name of Dr. Hartwell Carver, a physician and businessman, because even all the way back in the 1830s, medicine and money kind of went hand in hand in the United States. So he's going to propose the idea of building a railroad to connect the east to the west. This proposal wasn't taken seriously at first because
how?
we don't own half of what's between California and
so there was a brief
Illinois.
Period of time, maybe just days long or years, where the American government didn't just think that's fine, it's ours, we can do what we want with it.
Yeah.
They actually said, we don't own that.
Just a short period of time.
Yeah, not long.
Not long. Hartwell Carver, he's going to spend the next couple of years really building up the idea for this support through multiple newspaper articles that he would write, really trying to drum up the support in Congress for it. In 1847, he's going to write a proposal to Congress specifically that says, hey, why don't we connect California to Illinois through this railroad that I've been talking about for the last 5 years? We could totally do it.
Yeah.
Congress goes, what we're going to do, okay, so I like the idea, but we don't even know if this is remotely feasible or not. So we're going to spend the next few years actually doing surveys of this territory to see
who we have to get rid of.
Who do we have to get rid of to do this?
And what hills we have to blast through, I imagine, at some point.
Yes. Yeah. So they're going to support the idea of conducting a survey. And what better department, Johnny, in the United States to conduct that survey than the War Department, because it is very feasibly possible that there might be a war or two that comes.
Yeah, well, it seems like Mexico, they knew that they were traveling and examining the land Indians, to determine whether or not, or who we're going to have to fight, how many troops we're going to need, and everything else. Because, I mean, they've been out in Mexico. We're out in California. They know what's in between, right? At this point, they get it.
Yeah, we've done the Lewis and Clark have done their thing.
Yeah.
The War Department conducts the Pacific Railroad surveys from 1853 to 1855. They are a brilliant examination of 400,000 square miles of the American West with detailed information on the region's natural history, including drawings of its birds, reptiles, plants, and they forget to do topographical maps.
I'm sorry. They drew pictures of birds and plants and animals.
But don't do topographical maps.
They didn't think maybe you would need to know if there's a hill or a valley or a river or whatever
to determine
whether or not blue jays
feasible.
were in the area.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They went bird sighting instead of doing their job. But what they do bring back is 3 routes that could be sort of feasible, again, without the topographical map, so we don't know how much this is going to cost or if it's feasible or not. They bring back 3 different routes to Congress to say, hey, these are the routes that you could possibly take. The first proposed route is a northern route along the Missouri River through Oregon Territory into, from Missouri into California that way. A big problem here is you've got the Sierra Nevadas.
Yeah.
A huge mountain range.
It's big.
Which you'd have to go through. The central route, which would go through the Platte River in Nebraska, following the Oregon Trail, an area that's very prone to heavy snowfalls, which got the Donner Party caught and, eat each other.
I'm guessing they don't have... Do they have snow removal trains at this point in
No,
history?
that's
With
not...
the big plows? No? Okay.
Yeah, that's not in the forethought here. Again, having to go through the Sierra Nevadas. And then there's a southern path through Texas, through the Sonora Desert into Los Angeles, which would avoid the Sierra Nevadas altogether, and actually is the most feasible route because it's pretty flat. It goes straight through a desert. I mean, you're going to have issues of bringing in wood and rail lines and water for the water and fuel for
people
trains
working in the desert.
In the desert, but from a feasibility of you're avoiding the mountains, it's pretty
just
damn
the
straight.
path is really all these guys are talking about. Yeah.
The problem with this is we don't actually own the land between Texas and L.A. That's still kind of owned by, I believe, Mexico at this time.
I mean, we don't own any land that connects them, do we? Is there a connection, or it's
we do own the Oregon.
Separate.
Yeah, well, the Oregon area.
So it's up at the north side.
But we don't.
That's kind of close to what the Canadian border is now.
Yes, we don't.
Neighborhood?
What we don't own is we don't own the Southwest Desert area, what is now Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, that kind of stuff.
Mexico, yeah.
Just yet. Don't own it just yet. Because what the survey does do is it encourages the Gadsden Purchase of 1854, which buys all that land.
Oh, how about that?
Yeah, problem solved. There's a route, and so clearly Congress is going to choose the middle route.
But they bought the land.
Yeah, they bought the land, and then
just now they have that.
And then from 1854 until they decide to build this railroad, they get into a lot of infighting and political turmoil as to which state gets the start in the east.
That's big, right? Like that's
wherever that line starts.
You're now a huge thoroughfare for everybody that wants to go out west. And come back,
and everybody
east.
And come back east. Yeah, so everybody kind of wants to be the state that gets that. Illinois up in Chicago, they're like, we're kind of the hub of the West right now, anyways. So we should get it. You got St. Louis, who's like, we're kind of the hub. We should get it.
St. Louis kind of makes the most sense if you're asking me. That's pretty centrally located.
But Johnny, this drags on until the Civil War is declared. And then starts with the South seceding. So there goes the whole southern route out the window because we can't really build.
So that's why that's probably one of the main reasons that that never went. But they kept this was going on. So this was the negotiations, the talking about it, the figuring out what state it's going to be in. This is all going on during the Civil War now. They've not started building yet?
The Civil War, we haven't started building it yet. We're just deciding if we're going to build it and which route to take. And this goes into the Civil War. The decision for the central the central line gets spurred on by a Theodore Judah who conducts multiple surveys through the Sierra Nevada, which would go through that middle range. And he says, this is perfectly feasible. Trust me, guys. Been up there a bunch of times. We can totally build a railroad.
Y'all heard of dynamite, right? Y'all heard of that.
Yeah.
We'll just right through it.
Well, you know where the Donner Party went through? Actually, that would work. Yeah, we're gonna build a railroad line through where the Donner Party went into the Sierra Nevadas. I don't see this ever.
They'll just bring more
ever
people,
backfiring.
Maybe? They'll be all right. It'll be fine.
So basically, he's like, trust me. With enough money, with enough vision, anything is. It's the American dream here. Anything is possible with enough money and enough vision.
Yeah, just keep throwing money and probably bodies at it, and
bodies at it.
We'll finish it.
Now, the center path is chosen. It goes through the Donner Party Trail, through the Sierra Nevada mountains. So not a bad route from that angle if you don't mind getting stuck in the mountains in the winter and eating yourself.
Maybe. Just maybe. I mean, it's not guaranteed you're going to do that.
Yeah, it's true.
It just happens there more often than other places in the United States.
Lincoln is now president, and even though Congress agreed on the route, they couldn't quite agree on the starting point in the east. In the west, Sacramento was the obvious choice. It was one of the bigger terminals that was already there. There was already a workforce that was in place, railroad lines that are already established. It seemed like the best option, and the closest to where they were wanting to go through where the Donner Party route was.
Okay, yeah, lines up nicely at the end of
But
that
now in the
trail.
east, I mean, you can link that line up anywhere in the east.
I mean, yeah, it's just do you keep it going straight or do you turn it north or south? Well, not south, but north.
Yeah, not south. Not south. Not south
north or further north. So where
Lincoln,
they decide?
So Lincoln gets his first. Lincoln gets his first thing where he has to decide between which cities they want. There are three main contenders. You've got St. Joseph, Missouri, and Kansas City, Kansas, and Council Bluffs in Omaha, Nebraska. So you get St. Joseph in Missouri, Kansas City, Kansas, and Council Bluffs, Nebraska.
Okay.
They all go up to Lincoln and say, hey, we want the city here. Help us out. Now, one of the people that Lincoln is friends with or a work acquaintance with or had a good working relationship with is a man by the name of Thomas Durant. Dr. Durant, who's a retired ophthalmologist, also the one of the head guys in the Union Pacific Railroad, he had business relationships with Lincoln back in the day where Thomas Durant's bridge in Missouri, there was an incident where a couple of boaters ran into the bridge and then tried to sue Mr. Durant because they're like, it's your fault that you put the bridge here. And Lincoln successfully defended Durant saying, no.
That's good.
You ran into the bridge, dude. Like, it's your fault.
Don't do that. Yeah.
Don't do that. Out of all of this and all of these business dealings that Lincoln had in Missouri, he gained some property and building holdings in Council Bluffs as an attorney for payment. So, Johnny, can you guess what city Lincoln decides that the eastern terminus starts in?
It's got to be Kansas City,
Council
right?
Bluffs. Yes, it's Council Bluffs. He even says when he makes a decision that, like, this could be a problem because I can see where you guys are going to look and see that it's a problem.
And be like, yeah, maybe there's some vested interest in this area.
When I make the Eastern Railroad here, like, yeah, I have property here that's going to go up in value. And yes,
sure, it's going to go up 1,000-fold.
Yeah, and yes, that gives Dr. Durant's Union Pacific Railroad the easterly construction zone. It's going to be given to them, so I can see where. But trust me, guys, it's the best route because it follows multiple rivers that are very, very fertile. So that's going to give prime opportunity for people to settle along this rail line. So it's really the best for the country. And that's,
I mean, it's just flabbergasting that the government would just do things that benefit them and their friends. Like, and not actually just think about the American people. That's what I mean. How did anybody do anything back then? That's insane.
Yeah. And speaking of which, before this announcement was officially made, Dr. Durant bought a shit ton of property in Nebraska, and then sold it at a exorbitant premium.
A nice little profit.
Once
So
the announcement was made.
All right. So that's insider trading.
Yeah, definitely insider trading. Definitely illegal. Now, the funny thing is a lot of these laws about insider trading and politicians not being able to own stock in private businesses and all that kind of stuff, they don't really exist yet. But they might exist.
That's weird.
Yeah, they might exist later because of things like this, yeah.
Yep.
So now we know where the lines are going to start and where the lines are going to end. We've selected the Union Pacific in the east to link up with the Central Pacific in the west. All we need now is funding. Okay. And that's going to come on July 1st. It's going to come on July 1st when Lincoln is going to sign into law the Pacific Railroad Act of 1862. So before I move on anywhere else, briefly let that set in. In 1862, the United States is July of 1862, the United States is in the middle of a civil war.
Yep.
Not going the greatest, follow Civil War in hindsight, not going the greatest for the Union at this time. But we have so much extra money, so much extra material, so much extra men that we can take on this massive infrastructure bill while the war is going on.
Well, I mean, you can't
no
just
risk
that the country doesn't stop just because of a little civil war, right? There's still money to be made. There's still people to be abused. There's still...
The South doesn't have guns. They can't feed themselves. But damn it, the North is going to build a railroad.
I assume the rails are made out of steel, which would be the same thing
steel.
the guns are made out. So we could just take that steel and use it for miles and miles and miles of rail lines and not guns.
Cool. So the government is going to raise money by issuing 30-year bonds at 6%. So really, that's not too shabby. Government bonds at 6%. over the course of 30 years. They're going to pay the railroad $16,000 per mile over flat grade, which is roughly $461,000 today. 32,000 miles over rough grade.
$461,000? Or 46?
$461,000 in today's money.
Per
16,000
mile.
then. Per mile.
A flat.
16,000 then. Yeah, a flat grade. $32,000 back then in rough grade, which is $922,000 today, and 48,000 miles or $1.3 million in today's money to go through the mountains per mile. Per mile.
How
Notice,
many miles?
I said per mile. Per mile here. So
yeah. That's a lot of miles.
It's not really encouraging you to go straight. Yeah, it's not really encouraging you to go straight with this road. Oh no, we got to take a random detour.
We'll just go around. Well, I guess, but if there's a mountain in the way, you have to. They'll just go around trees, but you want to go through the mountain because you get nearly $1 million a mile.
Yeah, there you go. It also grants land 10 miles on either side of the track to the railroad companies that they can do with pretty much whatever they please, sell off to help.
10 miles either side?
10 miles either side, yeah. So 20 miles total between the tracks. Yeah. A lot of land. How much land, Johnny?
Lot of land.
The equivalent of the size of the state of Texas. That's how much free land the government gave these two railroad companies, who in turn sold said land to help generate costs to build the railroad.
Holy shit.
Why wasn't this taught in school? It was such a blip note. But anyways, it gets
it was. We built a railroad. It was great. Everybody was happy except for the Chinese slaves that built it.
Yeah. So let the project begin, Johnny. The key players for the Union Pacific are Dr. Thomas Durant. We've already met him, but I also have to point out that he also made a lot of his money through the Civil War. While this was all going on, he was building a railroad. He was also making money by illegally smuggling cotton from the South and then selling it in the North with the help of a major Greenville Dodge. War profiteering is illegal even at this time, but
sure, but also, I mean, we needed some of that cotton, right?
We did need some of that cotton.
So maybe look the other way here.
Yeah, look the other way. Here's what happened. The Central Pacific, there was a President Leland Stanford. Yes, that is the Stanford for the Stanford College. And
no kidding.
What I've read about him, he is a glory hog and a lazy worker who did really nothing.
A glory
on
hog?
The railroad. Yeah, who did nothing on the railroad.
He named a college after himself. So
he did nothing on the railroad but helped nail in that final spike. It's like, I did it! But
the last one.
But you did.
So it's like the ribbon cutting or the groundbreaking ceremonies they do, where they get like potted dirt and have politicians dig that,
shovel the potted dirt,
as though that were something.
Yep, you are right, Johnny. There is a vice president, Collis Huntington, who's the political lubricator, so to speak. There's Mark Hopkins, who's the treasurer, and a Charles Crocker, who is gonna not do so very well in this, and then once he dies, they shoot him out of history, and we're like, well, he didn't do anything, even though he's the construction supervisor. So the guy who's actually doing the building, once he dies, they're like, yeah, he didn't do anything. Screw him, get rid of him.
Yeah, he didn't make it. He didn't make it, right? So
all these men become fabulously wealthy, except the shit does eventually hit Durant a little bit in the butt towards the end of his life, but not really. A little bit.
How's that? What happened to him?
Well, he doesn't die famously wealthy because some of the stuff does. Spoiler alert: the Union Pacific goes belly up shortly after this whole thing is done. But we'll get there. We'll get there. So first problem that we encounter is what gauge are we going to build this railroad in?
Oh, right, because there's different gauges.
Yeah, because there's different gauges. Watch Civil War Trains episode that we did on that, and how the South never figured this out. So in the North, the gauge was pretty much set at a standard 4 feet 8.5 inches. Which, if you want to get the semantics of that, it's about the size of a horse's ass because of the wagon train, the wagon wheel ruts and all that kind of stuff. Oh yeah, but anyways, 4 feet 8.5 inches. Now the other major side that they were trying to determine was 5 foot. So 5 foot gauge or 4 foot 8.5 inches. Lincoln also gets to decide this, and instead of going with the 4 foot 8.5 inches that was pretty standard, he brought in all of his confidants. He says, "Hey, I want you to vote for your favorite. Write it down on a piece of paper, put it in this hat, and then I'm going to draw out of the hat. And the first thing they draw out of the hat, that's the gauge that we're going with."
Well, that's stupid.
That's stupid. And he went with 5-foot gauge. And then Congress immediately said, that's stupid. We're going to overrule you for 4 foot 8.5 inches.
Yeah, because I imagine where they're linking up the rails out of there are likely 4 feet 8.5 inches and not 5 feet. So they don't want to travel across the country and then have to change the rails, the train on the rails. That's nonsense.
Yep. Pretty much nonsense. So it gets thrown out pretty quick.
Well, thank goodness somebody was paying attention.
Construction is going to begin in 1863. The Central Pacific and the Union Pacific run into labor issues right off the bat because, there's a war going on, and the white people are pretty much fighting that.
And so where do you turn if all the white folks are fighting?
So the Central Pacific turns to Chinese labor brought in from Canton region of China. They essentially paid mob bosses.
Not.
I mean, it's not this bad, but it's this bad. They basically paid mob bosses to kidnap poor Chinese in Canton, ship them over to the United States to work on the railroad. Like that's
okay. So it was just forced labor.
Kinda how it happened.
This wasn't a bunch of Chinese immigrants coming over on their own will and then saying, "Hey, you know what? I need a job. Let's get a rail." I'm sure there's some. There's also some. The three of you aren't enough. We need about 30,000.
Because
so if
you want to, so the railroad, the Central Pacific, what they did is they actually paid this import-export company to bring in the workers, and they actually paid that company for the workers' work. They paid that company $25 a month for each worker, and then that company ethically gave those workers all of that money.
Yeah, so they were acting as a contract, basically. Yes. Like if you're a contractor, the main company pays your contracting company, and then they pay you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Now, between $25 and $27 a month is what they were paid, minus the cost of food. You get some very important minus the cost of food and shelter. That's coming. You don't get that in your pay. That's coming off the top.
And how much was food and shelter? Did that depend on region? About $25.
About $23. You got $1 a month there. Now on the Union Pacific, they turn to the Irish immigrants that are coming over from the zip potato famine. So if you're an Irish immigrant trying to escape starving to death in Ireland in your home country,
you can work yourself to death here in America.
Yeah, you had two options. You got off the boat and you got a gun and you went to war. That's option number one. Or option number two, they ship you out west and you work on the railroad.
And now you can work on a railroad.
But they got paid. John,
all right, Tommy. What would you choose?
Oh, fuck. God,
that's a tough one.
Initially, my gut instinct went to railroad, but knowing what I know about the railroad, I don't. You're just as likely to die on the railroad.
And there's a good chance you could be some sort of, low-ranking officer or something and just be, out of base somewhere, maybe out west. Maybe get stationed out west.
Yeah,
it's not as
possibility.
Bad.
They do get paid a little bit more.
That's a tough one.
That's a tough one. They get paid $35 a month, which is what, here's the thing. This is the breaking point. They do get paid $35 a month, which is more than the $13 a month you get as a private. So as an Irish soldier,
minus food and room and board.
You're going to be you're getting your $35 a month. And there is that follows the Union Pacific. There's a brilliant TV show that's done by AMC. It's over now, but it's a great show. I highly recommend it. Hell on Wheels. You got to get over the fact that they got the guns all wrong. Like, okay, this is a Griswold and Gunnison. What Cullen Bohannon carries in the show is a brass frame Colt 44, which is not a gun that ever existed. But this is the Griswold and Gunnison that they keep saying
what an idiot.
Has. What an idiot. But anyways, great show. And what the Hell on Wheels actually is a group of entertainers, so to speak. It's an entertaining tent city that would follow the railroad as it went on through its construction path. They provided prostitution, alcohol, gambling, picture shows. They had little light picture shows that you could watch, like on slideshows, if the hookers and the booze bored you. So at least if you're on the railroad, once the 12-hour workday is done, you have some means
entertainment
to
of some
income.
sort. Yeah.
If you're a soldier,
I was gonna say it was like a traveling circus, but it doesn't sound like a traveling circus. It's a traveling casino and whorehouse.
Traveling casino
essentially.
Whorehouse. It's a traveling Reno, Nevada.
There you go.
Hell on Wheels. Go watch the show, which surprisingly gets a lot, and it follows the building of the Transcontinental Railroad, and surprisingly gets most of the themes right. Like for a show, it does a pretty damn good job.
That's not bad. If they could just get their guns sorted out, they'd be all right.
Yeah, that really does irritate me because it's not just that. But anyways, I'm gonna get off.
We're not talking about that. Transcontinental Railroad, Tommy.
Transcontinental Railroad.
Stay on target.
So there's the money situation sorted out. There's the labor situation sorted out. The big problem that the Central Pacific runs into is right away they're in the Sierra Nevadas. Like, we're here. The mountains are right here.
Hello.
We got to get through them. So how do you get through them? I know you said dynamite earlier. Dynamite itself hasn't really been perfected yet.
Oh no, really?
Not really.
Oh.
So they're still using nitroglycerin in more of its raw form, which is what the Central Pacific turns to blasting holes in the mountain to dig tunnels through. Mm-hmm. It's a hell of a lot more effective than just using gunpowder itself and hammering spikes. The problem with nitroglycerin is it's a liquid and it's very unstable. Yeah, if you take it and you go
volatile.
Boom.
A little bit. Yeah.
And you can't transport that. You can't transport that on the rails because in 1866, a shipment of 300 pounds made its way from to San Francisco by rail and steamboat. When it got to San Francisco, they noticed that the crates were leaking. 300 pounds of the stuff, crates were leaking. In the Wells Fargo wagon, the Wells Fargo building, workers were like, they knew what it was. They knew it was leaking, but they were like, the railroad was like, it's the boat's fault. And the boat's like, it's the railroad's fault.
Who cares?
Two Wells Fargo wagon workers are like, well, we'll just crack these crates open and see. So they take a chisel and a hammer and they go, tink, and it goes
300 pounds.
Boo!
Oh shit!
I
mean,
three workers instantly die, and there's no more Wells Fargo wagon building in San Francisco.
Do you think that was up there on the largest explosions, man-made explosions, at that point in time?
Well, no, because at that point, 1866, we had the crater.
Crater was already happened. Okay, I was wondering if it was before or after that. Yeah, that's right. All right.
So the stuff actually had to be mixed on site. The Central Pacific turns to a UK chemist by the name of James Howden, who developed several different ways, and he's also one of the big, developers of a more stable dynamite.
Yeah.
But he has a bit of a drinking problem.
I feel like, everybody that could afford the liquor did back then.
Well, that, and then, of course, he's also, like, at any point in time, what he's working on could, blow up on him and kill him. So, I probably have a bit of a drinking problem with that, too.
Yeah, but that's not that big of a deal, because then it suddenly becomes not his problem anymore.
And because of this, there are a couple of boom accidents on the railroad.
Oh, no.
And we don't really know how many Chinese workers. We know about 15,000 to 20,000 were brought in, and we're not entirely sure how many of them lived.
Were able to continue.
Ordeal.
So 15 to 30,000 were brought in.
So you pair up the dynamite going boom boom, or not the dynamite, but the nitroglycerin going
pre-dynamite.
Boom, boom. You pair that up with the avalanches, rock slides, horribly cold.
Slides,
horribly cold working conditions, or out in the eastern side, horribly hot working conditions when you get into the plains
side of the coin. Yeah.
In the summer. And you don't have the best access to water. You're working 12-hour work days with no real breaks. We estimate that 12,000 workers died building this railroad, but I guarantee you
it's
times that by 5.
It's got to be way more than that.
If
they're admitting to 12,000, it was probably 12,000 white people that died, and then they just
ignored the Chinese.
Didn't care about the rest of it.
Now I can't tell you the whole story about this without telling the story of the corruption that followed the railroad the entire way. And
during it being built,
there is so much about the Transcontinental Railroad. I can't cover everything, so I'm focusing on the corruption instead of the actual day-to-day construction.
Yeah, they built rails every day. Blew some stuff up, connected them eventually.
So the corruption happened right off the bat. So Dr. Durant mostly is responsible for this with the Union Pacific. Congress, when it all started, said that no one person in either railroad can own more than 10% of the railroad stock itself. Not really hard to sell. That limits how much stock you can sell, but it's not really hard to sell this stock. And Durant goes on a spree of probably selling more stock than actually existed in the company, including to individuals like Brigham Young, who's the head of the Mormon Church out in Utah, with a promise that I promise that the terminus is going to go through Salt Lake City, right through the Mormon capital, because I promise you we'll do that if you give us money to build this railroad. And then he,
I'm guessing
didn't
doesn't go through Salt Lake City.
Yeah, no? Doesn't go through Salt Lake City. He has a habit of doing this all over the place. Like, oh yeah, I guarantee you, there's going to be a terminus here.
So he's the worst kind of snake oil salesman.
Yeah, sells land here, and then it's like, we changed our mind.
Oh, sorry. Congress. I mean, I tried. They told me of it initially, but then what are you going to do?
So there's that problem. During the war years, during the construction during the Civil War, the Union Pacific barely made any progress because Durant's being paid per mile. So he goes, windy, windy, windy. It just makes the most ridiculous path.
What they should have done is we'll pay you by linear mile between the 2 points. Yeah. So if you go like this for 5 miles, but you only travel 1, that's 1 mile. But that's not how the contract was.
Yeah, it's not how the contract worked.
So we really have a windy ass transcontinental line.
Well, spoiler alert, Johnny. There's not much of it left, but we'll get there.
Oh, it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Oh, but people use trains so much.
Yeah, parts of it do. Lincoln started to catch on to this, so he had Congressman Oakes Ames, who was a part of the railroad committee, go out to clean things up. And how Oakes Ames cleaned things up, because Lincoln is a very good character judge throughout the Civil War in all of his decisions that he makes. Oakes Ames cleans things up by working with Durant directly to create a fake company with a French name called the Crédit Mobilier. They're going to be the construction company for the Union Pacific. So the Union Pacific hires this fake company called Crédit Mobilier
Shell Company
to actually build, Shell Company to actually build the railroad. That Shell Company is going to charge like double the cost to actually build to the Union Pacific. He then can sell as many stocks as he wants in Crédit Mobilier because they're not a railroad. They are a contractor that's building. There's a company that's building a railroad.
Holy cow.
In order to get Oakes Ames on board, he's going to give Oakes Ames the president of Crédit Mobilier. He's now the president. He's also going to give Oakes Ames' brother the presidency of the Union Pacific. So,
wow.
Nepotism
Must be nice.
At its finest. Oakes Ames isn't dumb and knows that Congress is probably going to catch on to this whole thing.
Eventually.
So in order to make Congress ignore the situation, what better way than just to give ass tons of stocks?
Oh, yeah, stocks, not just straight money.
To Congress. In fact, it gets so bad, stocks and loans to Congress, and it gets so bad that there's like letters from Oakes Ames to congressmen going, hey, I noticed that you're behind on your loan payments. Do you want me to just go ahead and write this loan payment off? And in the future, if you need more money for your campaign, why don't we find a way to do it that's not a loan?
Me paying you? Yeah, so this is
and he's a congressman.
Maybe not the start, but this is
Oakes Ames himself is. Yeah.
It's like
Oakes Ames himself is still a congressman. Yeah, it's a lobbyist, but Oakes Ames himself is also a congressman too. So can't forget that. It is estimated that there was an excess of $44 million in corruption alone on the Union Pacific because the Union Pacific, it only cost them $50 million to actually build their chunk of the line, but they billed for $94 million. So there's $44 million.
And that's not like their cost, and then like you're paying for that. That's not a materials cost. That's what they paid all their workers when they got all the materials. That's the full job cost. Completion. Everything's done.
Is $50
million.
They
went ahead.
They
and
billed
did
for
$94
million.
That is also keep in mind 1860s money.
1860s money, $44 million in 1860s monies. Yeah, these are like
these are some
of the first like
millionaires.
These are the equivalent. Like if you took the money and converted it out to what these people are worth. Oakes Ames, by the way, he made his fortune before getting into Congress with shovels. He had a shovel manufacturing company and made a crap ton of money selling shovels to gold miners in California.
Yeah.
And then also turned around and sold those same shovels to the railroads for
How about that?
Credit Mobilier's construction costs.
Holy crap.
So there's that.
No, nothing's changed.
But through all this, it's all the same. Through all this level of corruption, the road actually was completed. It took from 1863 construction all the way to May 10th, 1869 for it to be finally built. But there comes a problem is when they started building this road, they're like,
That's not that long.
We're going to start here. We're going to start here from both sides, and then they're going to meet in the middle. Not that long, really. It's not that long for it.
Yeah, I was wondering how they were going to, they're going to get to a spot and be like, oh, crap.
Yeah, but that's the thing is they didn't
and then the train's
decide.
Gonna have to go, whoop.
Yeah, they didn't actually decide which point they were going to meet at.
Build towards,
That's where Durant is like trying to set up his own like little corrupt city where he's like, this is my city.
Right here, yeah.
This is where it's going to be. And then they're like, no, this is where it's going to be. And everybody's trying to like cash in on like where the city's going to be. So the government actually does have to come in and step in. By this time, the government's Ulysses S. Grant. And he's like, all right, guys, Promontory Summit, Utah, that's where we're meeting. Make it so. Just basically point it on a map.
Bang. Yeah, just here it is. There. It's probably in between where they're, kind of starting from and going towards.
So there is a little bit of a race on to get it done. Both lines do meet on May 10th, 1869, and the Golden Spike is going to be driven into the ground as the first live streaming event, Johnny, as this is telegraphed worldwide as it happens. Now, locally, there's not a lot of time to get like big politicians and everybody together, but like the heads of the Union Pacific and Central Pacific are there, along with some minor politicians, and they hook the telegraph line up to the Golden Spike as it's being driven in. And as it's being driven in, once it's finally driven in, they tap on the line. Done. Just that's it.
But before that, they're all getting just ting, 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 or dots coming through every hit, and they're like, "What the hell does this mean?" hey! What? I don't get it. Okay. 6 years though does not seem that long to build that long of a railroad.
Yeah,
but again,
1911 miles. Yeah,
amazing things happen when you have no regard for human life.
I think they were averaging. I think they were averaging around 6 miles a day. There was at one point a race to see who could. Don't quote me on these numbers exactly because research and I didn't write it down.
Yeah.
There was a race one day to see who could build the most miles. The Union Pacific, I think, wound up building around 10, and the Central Pacific wound up building like 8 or 9 or something like that.
In a day.
So there was a race to see who could do the most in a day. Now, the Central Pacific did build less miles, but they also had to go through the mountains, so give them credit where that's due. The Union Pacific did build more of the track, but again, they went through mostly
a whole bunch of flat land.
So
yeah.
Take that as you will. In reality, though, when the telegraph went out that said done, they weren't really done because transcontinental implies the whole continent. And at that time, when that was done, you could not go. There was not a railroad line that went from coast to coast.
So, just on a single line.
On a single line, yes. On a
now,
single line.
where it met up but in the east where it met up, was there not a line into that station?
No, because the Union Pacific hadn't completed the bridge over the Missouri, which would take almost an additional year for that bridge to be completed once the lines met up. And the Central Pacific, they actually had to finish a line from Sacramento out to the Pacific Ocean, which would take another additional 6 months. That line,
and that's so you can just hop off a boat onto a train, I assume.
Yeah. That line went from Sacramento to San Francisco. It took like 6 more months after that to get completed. So it was actually 1870 before you could really truly get onto a train off the coast of the East Coast and then get off onto the West Coast in several
So
weeks.
it was a the Great Plains Railroad.
It was a
that doesn't quite roll off the tongue like Transcontinental does.
It is at the time given like it's like recognized as one of the 7 wonders of the world because like this railroad is built in relatively short time connecting this large body of land. It's early, Johnny. You got to remember.
Oh, at the time it was one of the wonders
at the time.
of the world.
Not now. Not now.
I was going to say,
it doesn't exist now.
How many wonders do we got now? Because
we got our aftermath report, Johnny.
Oh God. We're not supposed to have these for non-battle.
We have an aftermath
episodes,
report.
Tommy.
So first, It instantly creates an economic boom for the United States, made travel affordable and safe. It took a 6-month journey costing roughly an average of $1,000 and dropped that down to roughly an average of $200 if you wanted to get on East Coast to get to the West Coast. It took that 6-month journey and dropped down to like 2 weeks.
Oh, boy. That's wild.
And safe.
And you're not setting up wagon circles and stuff at night or whatever, hoping that the natives land who you are passing through, they don't find you and get upset.
And speaking of natives...
Oh, boy. Okay.
When the Transcontinental Railroad was completed and Grant's president, his corrupt politicians are like, we'll get rid of the Indians by starving them out. And that's when hunting buffalo from the train became a real popular thing. And we massacred asses and a buffalo. Plus, the line itself separated the two great herds, and the buffalo
of course it did.
They didn't want to go over the rail. Like, for whatever rereason, buffalo didn't want to go over the rail.
Probably because it's rock underneath it, right? They probably couldn't get good footing. They are 2 to 5 ton animals, or however the hell much they weigh.
I don't know why exactly, but they didn't want to. They didn't want to. They were very, very rapid at getting this done, and so within
killing the buffalo
years. Yeah, the railroad done.
Oh,
itself.
yeah, right.
So workmanship wasn't at its height.
Maybe
so within several years.
So what you're saying is maybe they shouldn't have had races to see who could get more done in a day.
Yeah,
they should have seen who could get it done better in a day.
Because within several years they had to replace large chunks of the line because they didn't drill enough. They didn't drive enough spikes per rail.
And so they just started bending up.
So rail needed to be replaced pretty damn quickly.
Cool.
With the completion of the Suez Canal, it made global shipping affordable and fast, putting the United States almost at the center of international trade.
Suez Canal is
through. Is that through Africa or is that through South America? I can't remember.
Okay.
Tell in the comments. It's either through Africa or South America. It's a big ass canal that. It's not the Panama Canal. It's the Suez Canal. It's the canal where that one ship a couple years ago got decided to turn through the Strait Canal and got Jimmy.
Wasn't that 3 months ago, Tommy? Yeah, it's in Africa.
Yeah. Okay. Africa. So it makes global trade. Real, because the Panama Canal.
That's the one through Central America.
That's the one. South America, Central America, one of those things. In any case,
it's not the United States of America. So
international trade boom. It really puts the United States onto a financial scene for the trade across the world. And even though Grant was only the president for the last few months of the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad, he gets into a little bit of a problem with the whole credit mobilier thing when it comes to light. It becomes a huge scandal for him.
When they realize that it's just a shell company?
It becomes a huge scandal for him when he becomes, running for his second term. Because his vice president in his first term, Schuler Colfax, was taking those bribes.
Shoot.
And got caught.
So did he have a second term?
Yes, Grant had the second term.
Oh, okay, it didn't tank his campaign, but it was a PR nightmare, I'm sure.
It ends his third term. He was going to run for a third term, but all this.
Oh, that's before. Yeah, that's right. We didn't have those limits.
It ends that ability for him to run for a third term, or get a third term. This whole thing becomes a congressional investigation, which is hilarious because. It's Congress investigating itself.
I mean, that always goes over well. They always find... It's like when the NFL has issues, and they investigate and find nothing wrong.
Well, thank you. Well, and what they do find is they find that Oaks Ames was guilty of bribing congressmen, but found no congressman guilty for accepting bribes.
But they did accept the bribes.
Somebody had to because he was guilty of bribing.
Yeah, and you can't get. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think you can get in trouble for attempted bribery of a congressman. Maybe, but I don't think that's what they convicted him.
That's not what they convicted him. They could
just straight up bribery.
But he doesn't serve any jail time or anything. He just gets ousted out of Congress.
Why would he? No, you're just a national shame. Go sit with all your money somewhere.
Yeah, where he goes home with all this money that he made.
Rough life.
Back to his shovel company. With all the money he made there, when there's a new gold rush in South Dakota coming around the bend where he's going to make even more money on his shovels. So he's fine. The Union Pacific does go basically bankrupt after all this when the whole, Credit Mobilier thing comes to light. And Thomas Durant does get raked through the coals.
Good.
And I don't
Deservedly so, it feels like.
I want to say he dies penniless, but I didn't really look into it super much because I am intending on doing an episode on Dr. Durant and the Credit Mobilier as
just
its own episode because this is who they bribed, how they bribed, what happened in the investigation. It's horrendous level of fraud. So the Transcontinental Railroad does last as king in the United States for transportation and trade for less than 100 years because the automobile gets invented pretty quickly.
Oh, God, because this was 69, so what, 25 years?
Yeah, because by like 1911, automobiles being mass manufactured.
Yeah.
And the Federal Highway Act goes into effect in 1956, where they build, they connect all the highways between the states. I mean, there's already highways between the states, but that's when we get like our full
interstate system, and you can.
So, railroads completed in 1869, and by 1956, it's completely obsolete, which goes into your whole thing like. Wow, the railroad. Yeah, it doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, there are sections of it that still do exist.
That are still operating.
Most of those, that are still operating, that still do exist. Most of those sections that do exist, that are still operating, are actually through the Sierra Nevadas. Because
that makes sense. Yeah,
spend all this time building a hole through a mountain.
Right. Yeah, you're not gonna blast another one just for you'll find a way to link up to that one.
Yeah, you'll find a way to link up to that one. So there's this episode was brought to you by a viewer recommended to us. If you have any recommendations for future episodes, have at it. We will talk about Credit Mobilier down the line when we get some time, but I hope you enjoyed.
That's it for this week in Historic Hindsight. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review, and join us next week when we talk about the Valentine's Day Massacre.